Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm calling the January 19th City Council. We are meeting in a remote format, and I will go over some of what that means. On March 6th, I issued an emergency proclamation declaring a civil emergency in the city due to the COVID-19. On March 24th, the governor issued Proclamation 20-28 relating to the COVID-19 emergency and open public meetings. Yesterday, the legislature extended the proclamation until termination of the state emergency or until it is repealed by the governor or legislature. Due to these proclamations, tonight's meeting will be held entirely remotely. The meeting will be recorded, streamed live, and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting or to make comments. And for those members that have called in this evening, thank you very much and welcome. At this point, we will take a moment to do roll call for our council members in attendance. So please say here when I call your name. Councilmember DeMichelle.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Council President Hunt.
Here.
Thanks. Councilmember Martz.
Here.
Thank you. And Deputy Council President Ray.
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Okay, so Councilmember Walsh, it looks like you may be having on and off connection issues.
Yes, it appears to have come back right before you asked, but I'm not sure it's going to continue. We'll see.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on you. So the next item on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask that you all keep your microphones muted, but you are more than welcome to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is the audience comments. And for those of you who submitted the online form to make comments, your name will be called shortly. For those of you who have joined us tonight and would like to make comments but did not sign up in advance, please press *3 on your phone, *3. We will call the last 2 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to make comments. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak this evening or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Yes.
Thanks. For those of you that are making comments, please direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individuals. And while this isn't a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. So when you are recognized, please unmute your microphone, state your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently. Limit your comments to 5 minutes and then remute your microphone when you're done. If you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed, and you're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if you're able to. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Citizens' comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes comments seriously. We thank you for taking the time to come and address us this evening. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person who has signed up to speak this evening?
Yes, and before I do, one more note for our phone-in callers. I'll request that you unmute, and you'll need to press *6 on your phone. If you've also muted your cell phone, you'll need to unmute that as well. The first person who signed up to speak is Jared Munzer. Jared, I'll be requesting you unmute now.
Welcome, Jared. Whenever you're ready to go.
Good evening. I would just like to thank Mayor Pauly for recommending me for appointment to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. If appointed, I look forward to being able to contribute in a meaningful way to the committee and to the community. If I'm not chosen, I will still assist in any manner that I possibly can to help out all the aspects that that committee takes part in.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Jared. City Clerk, do we have anyone else who would like to address the council this evening?
Mayor, no one else has signed up to speak, but I'll ask if there's anyone else on the line who'd like to make comments. If you could press *3 on your phone, that's *3, and we'll call on you.
And while we're waiting, I'll also remind anybody who's watching this evening or watching it later on YouTube that you can always write your council at any time by sending an email to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. City Clerk, do we have anyone else who would like to speak this evening?
No, not at this time.
Right. I am going to move over now to City Council President Hunt and ask her to summarize any comments she may have received by email on tonight's agenda topic.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received several comments by email on several items that are on our agenda this evening. And I am summarizing these comments while we're having virtual meeting. The first item that we received one email on was regarding AB 8077, grants for water system upgrades from our Cora Foundation. And the person who wrote to us commenting on this objected to this item being on the consent calendar and provided comments and questions on this item. Additionally, we received multiple emails with comments on AB 8087, property acquisition for Sammamish Plateau Access Road SPAR water system project. We received emailed comments on this item from 3 individuals. The questions and concerns from 2 of the individuals were in multiple emails, and many of those are reflected in the memo that's in our packet with answers from staff and comments from staff. And then a third person wrote to us on this item, provided comments on the topic, and asked about how this project fits into our city's broader water system plans. And that concludes emailed comments that we received on tonight's agenda topics.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. Very much appreciated that the public sends some of these questions ahead of time so that we may be able to bring you some additional information on your meeting night. So the next item of business this evening is our committee and regional reports, and I will call each council member by name. Councilmember Hall.
Thanks, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember Hall. I guess just a couple quick reminders. The next meeting of the Cascade Water Alliance Board of Directors is Wednesday, January 27th at 3:30 p.m. Still no agenda on that one. And then the next meeting of the King County Affordable Housing Committee of the Growth Management Planning Council is Friday, January 29th at 11 a.m. And we're going to be discussing amendments to the housing chapter of the countywide planning policies, like I've mentioned a few times before. Other than that, no report from me.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember DeMichelle.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember DeMichelle. I attended the Healthier Here Governing Board on January 7th, and following a brief business meeting, the speaker was Dr. Ben Danielson, who recently made headlines by resigning his position as director of the Brown Children's Center at Seattle Children's Hospital. Dr. Danielson, who is Black, spoke on the many ways that systemic racism warps the delivery of health care, program funding decisions, and the inclusion of people of color in organizational decisions. His presentation engendered a great deal of discussion, especially as it followed the January 6th events at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. In addition, Eastside Human Services Forum meeting will be held this Thursday, January 21st, and the January meeting of the Eastside Transportation Partnership was canceled. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember DeMichelle. I am looking. I want to make sure that Councilmember Walsh is with us, and there she is. Had to move my notes. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I'm here. This is Councilmember Walsh. Last week, the mayor, Councilmember DeMichelle, and I attended the East King Chambers Legislative Kickoff as a way to hear what was going on kind of with the state legislature. We heard from, I believe, the Secretary of State, and some of our legislators were there talking about the budget, as well as there were different kind of side panels on economic revitalization, transportation, and affordable housing, which each of us attended. And so that was an event. And then I also attended the City of Issaquah Chamber of Commerce meeting on Friday. got a chance to hear from them about some of the issues that are facing businesses as we continue through this COVID crisis, and just, I don't want to say the desperation, but the intense need from our business community, and how they appreciate the continued communication, but gosh, they really hope everybody's still thinking about them and understands the hurt that they're in. And so I promised to bring that on and keep them top of mind for everyone. And so those were the meetings I attended, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. Next, Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last week, I participated in interviewing applicants for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for 2021, and we had a lot of applicants this time around, which was really exciting. And the recommendations go to the mayor, who then makes recommendation to the city council. And I thought it was going to be on the consent calendar tonight, but apparently it will be at our next regular meeting. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Martz up next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Councilmember Martz. The Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board met on Thursday, January 7th. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend. I had a urgent situation develop at my day job, but I will be there next month. Sound Cities Association held a joint PIC committee orientation meeting on Wednesday, January 13th, and I would say fun was had by all. That concludes my report.
It was fun. I agree. Thank you. Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. The King County Growth Management Planning Council will be meeting on January 27th at 4 o'clock in a virtual format. The purpose of the meeting will be a work session to review the draft changes to the county planning policies. The Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors met on January 14th at 4 o'clock at headquarters, and I did not have time to prepare the notes from that, so I will send those to you via email after this meeting, and I apologize for not having the report for you.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Deputy Council President Ray. And Council President Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Council President Hunt. The WIRA 8 Salmon Recovery Council will meet this Thursday at January 21st at 2 p.m. WIRA 8 stands for Water Resource Inventory Area, and it's the technical name for our watershed. The agenda has been posted online, and I wanted to let you know about one item that is of particular relevance to the Issaquah City Council, which is we will have a presentation on the final draft plan from a ecology-led watershed restoration and enhancement committee. And this is a plan that has to do with helping to address withdrawals from permit exempt wells and restoring and enhancing stream flows. And this is relevant to us because we will be taking action to approve this plan before it goes back to ecology at our next regular meeting. So I will be seeing this presentation from the perspective of the whole watershed on Thursday. And if council has any questions for me or things that you would like me to ask, please do let me know. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. I have a couple things to share. There was an executive session held earlier this evening. I'd like to provide a vaccine update. As of January 18th, 2020, all older adults in Washington State over the age of 65 are eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. People 50 and older who live in multi-generational households are also eligible if they meet certain conditions. Due to a limited supply of vaccine, not everyone will be able to access the vaccine right away. However, access will improve as the supply chain widens and providers in King County begin to receive more doses. Earlier today, we had the second meeting of our Issaquah Vaccine Community Partnership, which includes representatives from Swedish Issaquah, Issaquah School District, Eastside Fire and Rescue, Costco, the City of Sammamish, and our city employees to coordinate on future distribution in Issaquah. I'm thankful we have such a diverse and committed team ready to serve this community. More details will be shared with our local community as additional supplies become available, but you can also look up information at issaquahwa.gov/vaccine. As we start 2021, one of my goals is to strengthen relationships and communication with our local faith-based organizations in Issaquah. Today was a memorial nationally for COVID-19 victims. And as I start to bring us all together, I invited all churches in Issaquah to ring their bells today, whether physical or over sound systems, at 2:30 p.m. to remember and honor the lives lost to COVID-19. The National League of Cities facilitated the participation of cities and towns throughout the country for this memorial. At the same time in Washington, D.C., a ceremony was held featuring historic lighting around the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. The last item I have for you tonight is on building codes and fire code updates. Two of the items on tonight's consent agenda calendar are AB 7902, 2008 Building Code Adoption, and AB 8089, the 2018 Fire Code Adoption. These agenda bills adopt the building code adopted by the Washington State Building Code Council, as well as some local changes. The building code update typically occurs every 3 years, but it was delayed this year due to COVID-19. At their January meeting, the State Building Code Council again extended the deadline for these statewide updates to July 1st, 2020. However, the governor has repealed this change and has reinstated the February 1st effective date. This means that if approved by the City Council tonight, the building code and fire code updates will be in effect on February 1st. Staff will provide notification of the updates on the city's website and through various trade and user groups, and additional details on the updates are provided in tonight's agenda package. That concludes the Mayor's report. Moving on to the consent calendar, it was distributed to Council in advance, and if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
Thank you very much. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? And if so, you may have to indicate in the chat because I have a script that is covering most of your faces and I can't see. I'll watch the chat for a second. I'm not seeing anything. Is there a motion to be made? Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I move to approve the consent calendar as it appears in this evening's agenda.
Thank you. Deputy Council President Ray.
This is Chris Ray. I second it.
It has been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask our city clerk to please do a roll call vote.
Beginning with Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Council President Hunt.
Aye.
Councilmember Martz.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, City Clerk. That passes unanimously. The next item of business on this evening's agenda is under regular business, AB 8087, property acquisition for Sammamish Plateau Access Road, or the SPAR water system project. This item was postponed from the January 4th council meeting to allow the administration to address the council and the community's questions. And I'd like to invite Public Works Director Bob York to present on this item. Welcome, Bob.
Oh, good evening, Mayor Pauley and council members. This is Bob York, Public Works Director. And tonight, thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief presentation regarding AB 8087, which concerns the acquisition of property from the Washington State Department of Transportation, WSDOT, for the Sammamish Plateau Access Road, SPAR, water system project. Next slide, please, Tisha. SPAR project is would be a two-phase project if approved. Phase one would involve providing a redundant potable water supply to feed Issaquah Highlands. This is important for resiliency because at the current time we only have a pump station and parallel pipelines going up the hill from the shop to the up to the Highlands, and if that were to fail for any reason, the Highlands and Swedish Hospital wouldn't have a water supply. So the new facilities that are being designed would, and they're being designed with resilient features, by the way, provide a second water feed to the Highlands and all those residents and critical facilities. Phase 2 in the future would be a reservoir for additional fire flow storage for central Issaquah based on the expected growth focused in the downtown area and central Issaquah area. So by way of background, this project has been in the planning stage and the evaluation stage for at least 9 years. But well before I came to the city, and by Sheldon, my predecessor, and I. Initially, WSDOT was hesitant about considering property sales of this, what they call surplus property, to the city, but multiple attempts over the years finally showed them the critical importance of this water infrastructure project to the city in terms of its importance for fire flow and a second feed to the Highlands. So as you'll see on the next slide, which I'll get to in a second, the location near Interstate 90, uphill from the trail and the freeway, was the only realistically feasible location for such a project. So it did require the land purchase, which is one of many agreements that we've had to work through with WSDOT, and this is one of the last ones before they would provide through the FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, a break in access to allow the and a facility franchise for the utilities that would exist on the trail. So we're getting awful close to meeting all the WSDOT agreements and requirements. But notwithstanding all the agreements with WSDOT, we also have an obligation and intend to achieve full compliance with all the city codes, including critical areas. So next slide, please, Natisha. So you can see the location we're talking about. It's a bunch of contiguous parcels and some tracks that are in the area between along the trail. The one feed to the Highlands is in the upper left-hand corner. You can see almost a line from the shop, the Public Works Operations shop, straight up to the Highlands. That's where our single feed is, or our dual pipe feed. And by going around along I-90 and up the SPAR access road, or Highlands Drive, you can see that represents a much more geographically diverse way to get water up to the Highlands. So there would be pipelines along Issaquah Preston Trail. There'd be a booster pump station and a reservoir in in a small portion of the properties that are shown in blue. Then the pressurized water would continue up the Preston Trail and up the Highlands Drive and connect to our existing water system around Discovery Drive. Now the importance of the secondary importance of why to acquire this property is the reservoir has to be at a specific elevation to make it work for the valley operating zone, which is the water level in the reservoir will be nominally around elevation 297. So you have to pick a place, or the city would have to pick a place on with the topographic features such that we achieve that precise elevation. And this property represented an opportunity to achieve that objective as well. Next slide, Tisha. So this is a brief overview of the required WSDOT approvals. It started with a demonstration of need. We've done this several times, including multiple WSDOT departments that subsequently became involved in this and asked why do we need to do this? Well, we had to supply that explanation. You can see in some of the documents that are exhibits to the agenda bill tonight the short summary of our statement by giving the reason why we our desire to acquire this land and do this project. Second thing we need to work through with WSDOT and with the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust is the preservation of the view shed on the mountainside, the hillside. So when I first arrived in 2016, we met with WSDOT and Mountain Sound Greenway Trust, including John Hoekstra, the executive director, to achieve this objective. We did a lot of things to make this happen, including preserving key trees, color selection, location of the facilities, so that for all practical purposes, the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust desire to maintain the view shed would be preserved. Next thing we had to do, because the FHWA, a federal agency, was involved, is achieve NEPA compliance for all the other things to happen. And the NEPA compliance document is included in your as an exhibit tonight in your agenda bill packet.
Bob, could you state what that acronym stands for, NEPA?
Oh, National Environmental Policy Act. It's
Thank you.
the federal version of SEPA, if you want to call it that way. But as I'll explain in a minute, it's much more, in many ways, it's much more complicated. So, but it was a daunting process to meet all their requirements. Then the break-in access is imminent, as I mentioned a minute ago, and it's based in large part on the approval tonight of the land purchase. Otherwise, there's no need for a break-in access. Something we just achieved a month or two ago, as you recall, is a trail lease that was negotiated with WSDOT and also in collaboration with the King County Parks Department, because they maintain the trail and would continue to maintain the trail throughout after our construction is complete. So we worked through that with WSDOT. Then, as you'll see in your packet tonight, as another exhibit, we had an independent appraisal for the land purchase to determine the fair market value. And I'll go into that, some of the details of that in a minute. Finally, the request tonight for the property purchase, which is imminent. So next slide, please, Tisha. We achieved this NEPA approval working with our consultants and with WSDOT in late 2018. NEPA, you can browse through the NEPA document, but includes, it was considered a categorical exclusion, which meant we satisfied all the NEPA requirements. Those requirements included things such as water quality, stormwater concerns, environmental justice, critical and sensitive areas, cultural resources, biological assessments, essential fish habitat evaluation, Endangered Species Act compliance. And in that case, our consultants and WSDOT delivered a letter of no effect to our, in that regard. So this was worked through mostly as a prerequisite for every other activity that would occur after that. Next slide, Tisha, please. So the beginning of our assessment of this property showed streams and wetlands present on the various properties. I don't show the property lines themselves here due to lack of timing and preparation, but you can see there's two complexes of streams and wetlands. One's to the east, one's to the west, and we have that narrow channel in between, and we're rising up to the open area is our ability, is where we have to deliver all these or build all these required facilities. So you'll see that better on the next slide. Please, Tisha. So this is a slide that shows in green, it shows our area of impact for the required water system facilities. and some of the other features are shown less visibly. Our design was altered and changed to avoid direct impacts to streams, wetlands, protect key trees, and that is a good percentage of the reason why the value of land is what you might call fairly reasonable for over 10 acres of land. The constraints that are basically the land that where we can do any projects represents around 12% of the total purchase of the land. So here's the appraisal cover sheet. Next page, Tisha, that's fine. About the same time as we did this NEPA document, we did a appraisal funded by the city independent appraisal, and that appraiser took into account all the value, the types of parcels we were buying, the constraints placed on those parcels, and the value came up to $249,000, which is equal to the purchase price WashDOT is requesting in the property documents that are included in tonight's agenda bill. Next slide, please, Tisha. Again, many of the reasons why this property is fairly inexpensive compared to the acreage is the NEPA restrictions, as well as the future city restrictions. The access, if you need to get a vehicle there, you have to use the trail, and that's we're stipulated they only use the trail 1 or 2 days a week unless there's an emergency. You can walk up there, as we'll get to in a minute, but it's really only available through the Issaquah Precedent Trail, so that constrains the property or the purchase price. And finally, that viewshed protection. Again, we're very narrowly constrained on what we can do and where we can do it. Next slide, Tisha, please. So a few details on the property transaction that we're requesting tonight. One, WashDOT, this is surplus property to WashDOT. WashDOT only uses a quitclaim deed for that kind of transaction. However, in response to questions and our own concerns, we did obtain a title report, which is included as an exhibit in tonight's agenda bill packet. And the city has also plans, subject to your approval, to obtain title insurance, and we have a binder already received to provide that insurance based on the title report. The title report's available, but by inspection and including input from our city attorney, we didn't see any significant issues in the title report that would make us overly concerned about acquiring this property. Next slide, please, Tisha. Historically, this property's had a wide variety of uses dating back to WashDOT gravel operations, but most recently, it's been used as a use, and I think according to the latest folks that have been up there, there still are homeless encampments present, at least one present on that property, on those properties. So questions came up about what's going to happen. If we acquire the property and the city takes ownership, unlike the present situation where WashDOT owns the property, the city's policy is that camps would not be allowed on the property once acquired. And there's a process that's spelled out in your agenda packet in some of the material that I prepared that spells out the details of that. The city basically would provide a notice to evacuate and offer access to resources and services as part of this process. Once the site is free of encampments, the city, and specifically we're proposing that the water utility as a as part of the need to acquire this property based on the water utility would provide site cleanup efforts for the infectious materials and trash that must exist up there. And then, but the interesting or neat thing about the property, in my opinion, is we need just 12% of the water utility just needs 12% of the available acreage to do our water utility work, and the rest of the property is free for open space and also potentially trails that the Parks Department has indicated there's long been a desire to link the Highlands to the Issaquah Preston Trail, maybe using this opportunity. So along with the acquisition of property comes from some possible side benefits other than that which is used for the utility. Next slide, please, Tisha. So as I mentioned before, there are critical areas. Those include streams, wetlands, steep slopes, landslides, whole lot of things to be concerned about. We're working through that process with our colleagues, Public Works colleagues in this Community Planning and Development Group. There's ongoing discussions right now about the findings, and all this has been prepared by our consultants and being reviewed by the consultants, peer review consultants retained by Community Planning and Development's team. So it looks like we can navigate through all the issues and comply with our Issaquah City Code. Some things like tree removal and retention, just like WSDOT, we have concerns, and if we remove trees, we have to mitigate for that. We're planning on doing that. Stormwater requirements, we're planning on, the latest plan is to use, it rains up there, it naturally disperses into the environment, and with our experts and including wetlands biologists, that's the plan to deal with the small amount of additional runoff that will occur as a result of our projects. Zoning, this land is the land that we're going to use for the water utility projects is zoned community facilities, zoning, CFF. Adjacent parcels are zoned something different, which is community facilities open space. But per our IMC, the proposed facilities are permissible within the CFF zone, provided a level 2 administrative site development permit is reviewed and approved. The Public Works Department and its consultants have submitted a permit package that we believe addresses the approval criteria outlined in the IMC. And again, this is under review by the Community Planning and Development team. A SEPA checklist has been prepared. CDP staff review is still underway, but the latest assessment is that a proposed mitigation declaration of non-significance is likely. And of course, the preliminary MDNS will be subject to public review.
Okay, Bob, you were doing really well, but now I've got 4 things for you to spell out for the community.
I hope I know the answer, so go ahead.
Okay, let's start with CPD.
Oh, Community Planning and Development. I should have.
Thank you.
Yep.
You did talk about a site development permit, SEPA.
Oh, State Environmental Policy Act.
Right. And there is a couple others. I'm not sure if any of the other council members caught it, but just for those who are watching who are not as engineering nerdy as you and I are, I want to make sure they get their acronyms. So thank you.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd say, which is not on the presentation tonight, but we've had discussions in the last week, and this could be the one of the first or second projects that would be eligible or where we would propose to hold a neighborhood meeting if that policy is indeed enacted. So there'll be another opportunity for the public to see what's going on if a neighborhood meeting is held. So final slide, Tisha.
I'll just jump in again. I think the acronym one of the council members is pointing out is MDNS.
Oh, mitigated. Yeah.
Which comes out of that State Environmental Protection Act process.
Yes.
So an MDNS is?
Mitigated, I better get this right, because I got it wrong too. A mitigated determination of non-significance. I think I got that.
Which is a determination.
Yeah, that's a determination that we can comply with SEPA requirements as long as we perform certain activities associated with our project.
Thank you.
Yeah. And by doing those things, the consequences to the environment would be considered non-significant.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. So in conclusion, it's time for questions, but staff strongly believes that the water utility really needs this project, and we need the land to do this project because it provides resiliency for our Issaquah Highlands community, including Swedish Hospital. And also the future reservoir provides the necessary infrastructure for continuing our focus on growth in the Issaquah, central Issaquah area. So staff would recommend that you improve this land purchase, but now I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Bob. And we have somebody up. Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. Bob, thanks for the presentation as always. Always enlightening and educational. Two questions. So if we purchase the land, that would come out of the utility fund, correct?
That's correct.
And do we have money set aside to do that in the utility fund?
Yes, this project has been on the CIP for years, and it's also on the approved 2021 budget.
Great. And then the second question, and you don't want to blame but yourself for this one. If we do a community meeting, what would be the purpose of the meeting? Because we would have already purchased the land. So what would we be asking the community to provide input on?
I probably phone a friend on this, but let me answer and get corrected by probably Andrea. It's to let the community understand we bought the land, but we haven't done the project yet. So it would help the community understand everything we're doing to try to minimize impacts on critical areas and achieve all our code requirements. Anyone want to add to that, Andrea or Wally? I guess I'm doing.
Hi, this is Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder. I just am chiming in to say I don't think I would have anything to add. I think it would be an informational meeting to the community, and we could also talk about what that open space designation would mean too over the long term.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I have another question here from Councilmember Hall.
Thanks, Mayor Pauly. This is Councilmember Hall. First, Director York, thank you very much, and in particular for the very detailed memo in response to council and community questions. I found that super helpful, so I appreciate you. I was hoping, I see Director Watling and Monica are on. I was hoping we could get a little bit more in depth in what will be done in response to people who are experiencing homelessness and encamped up there.
Please chime in, phone a friends.
Perfect.
Hi, Monica.
Good evening, Mayor Pauly and council members. Thank you for having us tonight. Yes, we have been in communications with our team and with Director York's team over the last couple of weeks. And as the new outreach person has been hired with the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank, we started communications and coordinations on starting to engage with folks in that area as of currently starting now in the next few days. So our hope was that the outreach specialist will engage with folks and provide resources and help them connect with services. On our end, we are trying to leverage resources that we already provide through the city's human services grants and connecting individuals with services, whether that's treatment or shelter services or other services that they might need. And then in the second phase, we are also evaluating the services that we have available as we learn more from what the needs are to ensure that we have the services available, or if not, to come back to council and request increased capacity for those services.
Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Pauly. This is Councilmember Hall. I think you hit on that perfectly at the end. It really, making sure we start early and identify the need there for those people. So that way we're not, waiting until the last minute and then saying, hey, you gotta get out of here. I want us to be, as much as we can, proactive with this. So thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. I am looking for additional questions. None have showed up in the chat, but I will give it a second. And while we are waiting, if there is someone interested in making a motion. I wonder, City Clerk, if we could have the motion wording put into the chat box. Thank you very much. Council President Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the mayor to enter into and execute the quit claim deed with the Washington State Department of Transportation to acquire property for the SPAR water system project.
Thank you. And Deputy Council President Ray?
This is Chris Ray, second.
Thank you very much. So it has been moved and seconded. And is there any council discussion? Going to give the chat a few more seconds. Not seeing any indication of a discussion. There we go. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. I was just going to ask, are we welcoming community comment on this particular item?
Typically, public comments are at the beginning of the meeting, and occasionally if there is a public hearing associated with one of your decisions, it also occurs later in the meeting. But I'll defer to the city clerk. I don't believe that there is a part of this discussion that involves community comment at this time. City clerk?
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
And comment from Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I will be supporting this. I think that we have heard loud and clear that we need to be proactive in terms of planning for growth, and we know that this is the way that's been identified by our city's engineers as the best way to have this redundant water supply that we know we need to have. So I am in support. One comment I wanted to make was there is an identified cost of $100,000 for cleanup and mitigation on the site that's in the memo, and in the financial impacts part of our agenda bill, it doesn't identify that cost, but since it's identified elsewhere, just for transparency, I think that should be considered in the impact, especially since it's relative to the purchase price of the property. I think that that expense is substantial or relevant. And I also just wanted to say thank you to Director York for the information and for the other city staff that provided answers to the questions in the memo and very thorough materials for our packet so that we thoroughly understood this issue before we voted this evening.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. Are there any other comments? And I will leave it open for a few seconds. Okay. Seeing no additional comments or discussion, the motion on the table is to authorize the mayor to enter into and execute the quitclaim deed with the Washington State Department of Transportation to acquire property for the South Plateau Access Road Water System Project. And I will have the city clerk do a roll call vote.
Beginning with Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Council President Hunt,
Aye.
Councilmember Martz,
Aye.
Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. That passes unanimously. And the next item on our agenda this evening is good of the order. And our first item will be ID 0793, council appointments. And I'm going to turn this over to Council President Hunt to allow her to speak to the appointments. Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. The appointments are listed in the packet, and so I'm going to read them now. And these are our regional appointments. Our city council members serve on many regional boards and commissions, and they represent us throughout the region on these commissions. And I also wanted to say thank you all for doing that and for serving on these commissions. For Cascade Water Alliance, Councilmember Hall will serve as the alternate. Mayor Pauley is the representative. Eastside Fire and Rescue, Council Member Goodman and Council Deputy President Ray will serve as the regular members, and Council Member Hall will serve as the alternate. Eastside Human Services Forum, Council Member Michelle will serve. Eastside Transportation Partnership, Council Member Michelle will also serve. Issaquah Chamber of Commerce is Council Member Walsh. Lake Sammamish Kokanee Interlocal Management Committee is myself, Council President Hunt. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee is Councilmember Goodman. Water Resource Inventory Area 8, RIRA 8, Salmon Recovery Council is me, Council President Hunt. And then for the Sound Cities Association, SCA Public Issues Committee, PIC, that will be Councilmember Martz, and Councilmember Michelle will serve as the alternate. I also wanted to note that in our email, we had indicated that we had a finance committee, and we have in the past had a finance committee, an ad hoc committee of council members that served to address specific financial questions. And in talking with Mayor Pauley, we wanted to make sure that we had a clear charge for that committee before we proceeded with reconvening it, and it has not been meeting recently. So before we start that up again, we wanted to have a clear charge for that group. So that's why that's not on that list this evening. And then again, just wanted to say thank you all so much for serving on these regional boards and commissions. In addition to these, council members also serve on additional boards and commissions, such as those where we represent Sound Cities Association. And it's a lot of work, and it's really important to our representation in the region, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. And I'm just going to add a little bit to what you said. That was the short list. There is a much longer list of service, and we do take that opportunity to have council members do the report out so that they can bring that information not only to the rest of the council that is not on in their particular chair, but also to the community at large. And I second what you say. It's additional time again, and I thank all those that serve in those appointments. Do council members have anything else for good of the order? And I will keep an eye on the chat to see if anybody raises their hand or has comments. Okay, I'm going to go to some upcoming council meetings. There will be a council study session on Tuesday, January 26th, and the potential agenda items include an update from the Issaquah Recovery Task Force. There will be a City Council special meeting on Saturday, January 30th for a council retreat. And there will be a City Council regular meeting on February 1st, and potential agenda items for that include the Capital Improvement Plan process. That will be an introduction to the process for this round of updates. Water Resource Inventory Area 8, RIA 8 Watershed Restoration Enhancement Committee Draft Plan. And extension of RV Park Management Agreement. The next item on the agenda this evening would be executive session, but it was held earlier today, so we are coming to the end of our agenda. And if there is no further business, and I'm not, oh, I see some. Okay, Councilmember Goodman, question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if we know when the retreat agenda is coming out.
Great question. I'm going to turn that over to Council President Hunt. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have that to you shortly. We can get an outline. We can get an outline tomorrow.
Yeah, we do have a leadership meeting tomorrow. That's great.
I was just curious. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to
good
check.
question. Thanks.
Check the screen, and I'm going to check the chat, and I'm not seeing anything else. That being the case, wow, record. It's going to be hard to beat this one throughout 2021. If there's no further business, the meeting's adjourned at 7:55 p.m. Great work. See you later. Thank you.